Well, another week and another video, people. Now, I wanted to start off with a huge thank you for those who recently watched my Ghost Recon Breakpoint video and subscribed. This channel's only been going for about 6 months, and honestly words cannot describe when people enjoy and engage with the content that you've worked so hard on. So again, thanks to everyone who watched and subbed. Now, if you're new to my channel, what I've been doing is going back and playing the Arkham games between new release titles. I've gone through Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and the DLC Harley Quinn's Revenge, and now I'm on to the prequel, and honestly, I can't decide if I like it or not. Arkham Origins is an interesting title, but it's not a Rocksteady title, but it's a game by Warner Bros. Montreal, the team behind the upcoming Gotham Knights game, which, alongside Rocksteady's Suicide Squad game, has inspired me to go back and replay these titles. Anyways, Arkham Origins works as a prequel well before the events of Arkham Asylum to a newbie Batman who's only been active for 2 years. Batman has no allies besides Alfred, and he's still considered to be a myth and a threat to the GCPD. The premise of Arkham Origins is, look, I'm gonna flat up and say it, it's pretty great. Gotham mob boss Black Mask has hired 8 top-tier world assassins to find and take out the Batman on Christmas Eve, and the winner gets $50 million.
$50 million? And who you think you kidnapped, Chelsea Clinton?
This story is simple, and honestly, it'd make a great movie. Now, unlike Arkham City or Arkham Asylum, rather than having the traditional rogues gallery like Two-Face and Mr. Freeze, Arkham Origins gives us some of these classic villains, but also some that some Batman fans may not be aware of. We get the return of Deadshot from Arkham City and Killer Croc here, but he hasn't evolved into the monster that he is in Arkham Asylum. We also get a first physical appearance of Black Mask, and this is how he should have been betrayed in Birds of Prey. Fuck, son. We also get characters that some may not know, like Lester Buczynski, the Electrocutioner, Copperhead, who looks like Miley Cyrus in this game, and probably notably and most realistic to his comic book origins is Bane. Now, previously Bane appeared in both Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, but he was this huge character who looked a little silly, but we'll get to Bane a little later. But there's a somewhat huge character and significant plot for this game, and I'll be spoiling it in 3, 2, 1... Okay, so Arkham Origins works as the first time the Joker and Batman meet, and while it's a great introduction for these two characters meeting, it feels like a giant undo button for the events of Arkham City. Joker has disguised himself as Black Mask and has hired these 8 assassins to take out Batman.
Technically, it's spy operation now. Isn't that right, boys?
There are some negatives that I'll get onto a little bit later, but Arkham Origins does do some fantastic things with the universe. As an origin for the Joker and Batman's first encounter, it's definitely memorable, and again, honestly, this is a fantastic premise for a Batman movie. The Rocksteady Arkham games are fantastic, don't get me wrong, they're superb and perfect, but the story of those games wouldn't transfer from game to a Hollywood movie as easy as this story would. Anyways, let's get back to what Origins gets right. The character design and suits are pretty sweet. Now, I've previously stated on the podcast Shake and Not Nerd that I'm a part of, if you want to check it out, go nuts. But I'm not a huge fan of the all-black Batsuits. But as an early Batsuit prototype for Batman, I definitely like this early design with the exposed panels and armor. Now, Bane looks and acts exactly like he should. He is a master strategist and even incredibly deadly, and Origins explains how he goes from iconic to this really giant beefcake of a character like he is in Arkham Asylum and City. As this is Batman in his 2nd year and he doesn't have any allies, it's fantastic to see basically everyone in Gotham against Batman. Police will attack on sight, and in one section of the game you need to sneak into the GCPD, and it's probably my favourite moment of the game. We get to see corrupt cops trying to cash in on this $50 million bounty, cops hiding things from Commissioner Gordon, or well, James Gordon, he's not Commissioner at the time, and you start to see the foundations of Batman's relationship with Gordon. Towards the end of the game, Firefly takes hostages on a bridge, and you'll approach Gordon and tell him and his SWAT crew to stand down taking on Firefly, and you can see how stubborn Batman is. But then Alfred reminds him that he can't do this alone. It's great storytelling. But sneaking into the GCPD and going through the bullpen, oh man. Now, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill do not return for this entry in the series, and that's worth noting, but we do get Troy Baker as the Joker and Roger Craig Smith as Batman, who are actually pretty good. Now, Roger doesn't sound or try to sound like a young Kevin Conroy, and in some instances he sounds a little bit like an angry Christian Bale, but Troy Baker does do a version of Mark Hamill, and it's pretty good and eerily creepy too at the same time.
This fruitcake is fantastic. Anyone want a piece?
Now, as Batman, and a younger Batman at that, you'll be doing more crime scene investigations, which are hands down awesome. You'll track bullet trajectory again, but also look for blood, any fabric left behind, fingerprints, and more. Warner Bros. Montreal took the bullet trajectory from Arkham City, which was great, and made it even better, so then Rocksteady followed that up again with Arkham Knight. Now, we got an outstanding boss fight, and what many consider to be the best boss fight in Arkham City against Mr. Freeze. But the other contender in this fight is the Electrocutioner. Nah, it's against Deathstroke. Not only this game and the 2000 series Teen Titans show introduced Deathstroke to more casual fans, but this boss fight was one of the reasons, probably why he got so popular. Deathstroke's fight is incredibly smart compared to other boss fights we've gotten. If you try to button mash and wail on him, he'll counter you and deal some serious damage. So you'll need to wait for him to attack you and counter him multiple times before you can start attacking him for a brief period of time. Now, it's not 100% original, as there are some moments that are exactly the same. Here's some side by side with Ra's al Ghul, again, Ra's al Ghul, and Deathstroke as an example, but it's still a really smart boss fight, especially after the hilarious first fight that was the Electrocutioner.
This is your last chance. Just think of me as a fat zapper. Now, come to the light. It's why don't we do hit? Me hit.
You got knocked the fuck out!
Now, other boss fights are pretty straightforward and a bit eh. The first time you go up against Bane, he'll work a little bit like the Titan enemies from the previous entries, or, well, like facing off against Bane in Arkham Asylum. He'll charge at you and you need to avoid his attacks and then stun him and wail on him, and you'll start to pull his venom tubes out of his back before he can take more damage. Copperhead is again like Ra's, where there are copies of the character and you need to find the real one, but she also has a heap of similarities with Scarecrow and having Batman hallucinate. Firefly is a bit like Poison Ivy, where you have to throw glue grenades, yeah, I'll get to that in a bit, and batarangs before you'll be able to pull him down to the ground. Croc is at the very start of the game and works as the real boss fight for the start of the game, or teaching you how boss fights work, and it's okay. It's not fear-inducing like the first game, but it's pretty cool when he tries to take a bite out of your face. We even get to apprehend the Joker and play as him inside of his head, which is pretty damn rad. When the Joker gets caught by Batman for the first time and sent to Blackgate Prison, he meets Harleen Quinzel, and the nerd inside of me, and maybe inside of you, lost their fucking shit. We see hints and teasers of the Killing Joke origin of the Joker inside the comedy club, and we even get to walk through Ace Chemicals and see from the Joker's point of view what happened to him, or what he thinks happened to him. There's even hints and references to Titan Formula and the side effects of mass overdose of venom. Arkham Origins really does explain how Bane goes from an iconic strategist to a hulking behemoth. But where Arkham Origins fails is, well, its gameplay. When going from Arkham City straight into Arkham Origins, the gameplay techniques and gadgets are exactly the same. The first third or so of the game is like playing a less polished version of Arkham City. It does get better and more interesting as the game develops, but after playing through Arkham City, I did find it a bit of a slog to get through the first couple of hours. Now, the world itself is the world of Arkham City plus a second island separated by a huge bridge. It's cool to see that it was part of Gotham City before it turned into Arkham City. You'll see Wonder Tower before it becomes Hugo Strange's base of operations. the original Sionis steel mill, and even more. Now this is cool, but its Easter eggs and attention to detail and the world itself isn't as up to standards of Rocksteady's Arkham City. Now, because there are 2 islands and a bridge, there is a fast travel system using the Batwing, as the Batmobile did not exist yet. To use the Batwing though, you need to unlock radio towers that the Riddler, or Edward Nigma as he isn't properly the Riddler yet, has trapped. Now these towers disrupt the signal to the Batcomputer and disabling the use of fast travel. This radio tower system though is incredibly painful, and you won't be able to fast travel without unlocking these towers, and going from one island to another without using the Batwing over across that big bridge is very boring and fucking tedious. Now again, this is Batman into his second year, and he basically has all of the gadgets, if not variants of his gadgets from the previous entry. You'll have the cryptographic sequencer, the weapon disruptor, the Batclaw, hell, even complete rip-offs of the freeze grenade that you get from Mr. Freeze in Arkham City, called the glue grenade. It does exactly the same thing as the freeze grenade and even makes glue rafts. Fuck off. By far the biggest thing that personally pissed me off was the grappling gun. Batman starts off with the boost attachment in Origins. That was an upgrade and stressed prototype in Arkham City.
See, you have called in the Batwing, sir. Did I forget to pack something?
No, Alfred. I think I need the grapnel boost.
But Mr. Fox told you it's not yet ready for field deployment. It's still in the prototype stage.
So not only has Batman basically got most of his gadgets, but he has a prototype that he put away for a couple of years. Yeah, I'm calling fucking bullshit. Now, Batman does have a couple of new gadgets, like this claw line launcher that you get from defeating Deathstroke, and the Electrocutioner's gloves that you steal from the Electrocutioner, which charge during combat and turn you into an instant win button. Thankfully, these gadgets do not return in future games. Batman even has a flawless detective vision, which is just insane for a relatively new Batman. It would have made the game more interesting and harder if the detective vision only worked for something like 10 seconds before it needed to be recharged, or it had an awful range that needed to be upgraded just like all of his other gadgets and abilities. Arkham Origins may be the origins of the Joker and the Batman's first altercation, but it doesn't feel like you're playing as a younger and less experienced Batman. The game will tell you that you are, and the world believes that Batman is a myth, but Batman has learned to sprint straight away. Batman needs to learn to fly and evolve as the game goes on, where the only development Batman has is leveling up throughout the game and upgrading your skills as you normally do, and it's cutscenes, but you don't feel like a young and experienced Batman. He needed to have some moments where he failed, where he tries to sneak into somewhere and gets caught and sets off alarms, or gets completely owned by a boss. Now at the end of the game, there's a moment where Batman gets ready to face off against the Joker and Bane in Blackgate Prison, and you return to the Batcave to save Alfred just before this. This would have been a perfect moment to have Batman use a new Batsuit that was similar in design to the suit that he wears in Arkham Asylum, and maybe use more gadgets and have an upgraded detective vision. Finally, there are a load of side missions here in Arkham Origins, which is great and helps keep the game alive longer than Arkham City. But it's worth noting that you won't be going up against all 8 hired assassins in the main story. You'll need to do the side missions, as the main story only takes care of 6 out of the 8 assassins hired. And Deadshot has some amazing criminal detective moments that shine. Mad Hatter also returns, but who gives a fuck about Mad Hatter? And there's not Riddler trophies, but there's other awful versions of them, if you ask me, that literally pull the rug out under from you once you think you've finished it, to the point where you basically want to turn the game off and stop playing. Randomly throughout the game as well, you also get told of police issues that are going along. So you'll be tuned into the police scanners, hearing riots or thugs or something happening. It's a little bit like playing the old Spider-Man games, or the Spider-Man game that came out in 2004, where there's police scanners telling you that there's a crime happening in the area. And it's kind of cool to respond to these crimes as they randomly appear while you're playing as Batman. Arkham Origins isn't a bad game. It's a bit like Majora's Mask. The game was made pretty damn quickly to give Rocksteady enough time to make Arkham Knight, but also to please Batman fans and hold them over until the next title. The story, voice acting, and the game is fun. It's sorta like ice cream. Even if it's mediocre ice cream, you'll still eat it. It took me a while to enjoy my time with Arkham Origins, but once it started to act like a new game and not a copy-paste of Arkham City, that's where it started to get interesting and acting like a new game. Sneaking into the GCPD and seeing other small sections of Gotham City, treating Batman like a threat to mobsters in the GCPD and giving us something new, but the core game and especially the start of the game is very boring. Even the secure doors and corridors inside Blackgate Prison are identical to Arkham Asylum. But next I'll be taking a look at the DLC I've never played before, the Cold Heart DLC, which follows my dude, Mr. Freeze.
Bring me Ferris Boyle.
I'm interested to know though, what are your thoughts on Arkham Origins? Did you think it was better than Arkham Asylum and Arkham City? Would you like to see more prequel games in the Arkham universe? Should Warner Bros. Montreal do their own trilogy on the pre-Arkham Asylum verse, which would be kinda cool? With the work Warner Bros. Montreal did with Arkham Origins, I'm excited to see Gotham Knights because it's not part of the Arkham universe, and apparently Batman is dead. I don't believe it though. I'll be getting on to Cold Heart between Watch Dogs 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and even more new releases. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, like, and chuck us a comment to give me your thoughts.
You feel?
It's like meeting someone I can actually relate to. Which, believe me, dear, I've never felt before. You understand? You're someone who's not afraid to let go and fall.